A very warm welcome to this evening, which is brought to you by Chichester Extinction Rebellion, XR. A word first of all about XR. It's an international movement that uses non-violent civil disobedience in an attempt to halt mass extinction and minimize the risk of social collapse. And all who share this vision are welcome. And if you're here and you want to know more about XR and what we're doing locally, please get in touch with us. You'll see our contact details at the end of the final presentation. The planet, our planet, is now very probably hotter than at any point in the last 125,000 years, long before human civilization began. Life on Earth is, as we know, in a crisis. Scientists agree that we've entered a period of abrupt climate and ecological breakdown, and that urgent action is required. I've just mentioned the unprecedented rate at which our planet is heating. But what's even more worrying, perhaps, is how fast our temperatures are rising. Scientists from all over the world also agree that 100% of global warming since 1950 is due to humans, and that nearly all heating since 1850 is due to greenhouse gas emissions and other human activities. This chart shows how global average temperatures have been rising in tandem with atmospheric carbon dioxide, and therefore the remarkably constant relationship with fossil fuel burning. Look at the atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide over the past 2,000 years, the red line, and then at the average annual temperatures from 1880 to 2019, the blue squiggly line. And you'll see that although there have been variations from year to year, the overall CO2 trend is upward. You can also see that we're already at 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and heading for around 3 to 4 degrees or more by the end of the century. Crucially, when temperatures rise this fast, it's impossible for many living creatures and plants to have time to adapt to such changes, not to mention the fact that many places on Earth that creatures would have previously taken refuge in from increasing temperatures like this have now been degraded, fragmented, or colonized by human activities.
So we know categorically that the Earth is warming, but we also know that the Earth has had several warm periods in the past. So is there really a problem for us? Well, the key point to note here is that the warm periods have not happened during our current human civilization. So the squiggly line on the graph here shows global temperature over the last 5 million years. On the right-hand side of the graph, we can see that over the last 10,000 years, so that's during the formation of human civilization as we know it, the temperature has been fairly steady until now. It's not until we go back 130,000 years ago that the temperature was at +2 degrees C. Thus, mankind as we know it has not existed at +2 degrees C, and in all reality, we don't know if we can. So the climate crisis is not something bad that may happen in the future. It is happening right now across the world. Droughts caused by global warming have been occurring for decades and will only get worse. Storms lead to the problems of too much water and flooding, and larger, more devastating hurricanes are already linked to climate change. Unprecedented wildfires in number, duration, and size, as we all know, have been occurring across the globe. Melting glaciers and ice sheets are causing sea level rises with ever more extreme coastal events. And the UK Environment Agency projects a 1 metre sea rise by the end of this century. Next slide. So just to reiterate, the world is at 1.1 degrees C above pre-industrial levels. We're heading for a 3 degrees C rise with current policies. And with a historic failure to curb emissions, we could be heading for 4 to 5 degrees C by the end of this century.
The global temperature increase is not linear. As the Earth heats, it sets off feedback loops. And as these feedback loops increase and pass certain unpredictable points, feedback loops become irreversible and uncontrollable. This is called a tipping point. Liken this to rolling a heavy rock up a hill. Once it reaches the top and then starts going down the other side, it goes out of our reach and rolls down the hill, destroying everything in its path. An example of a feedback loop are the increase in wildfires that we've seen this year. As the Earth heats, wildfires become much more likely. And these wildfires themselves release masses of smoke and greenhouse gases into our atmosphere, which, as we know, increases the heating of our atmosphere. As the heating increases, the wildfires become more likely, and the cycle continues and grows. Now, it's important to note that nothing has worked. Not traditional campaigning or international legislation has succeeded in levelling off our emissions, let alone reversing them. As you can see from the slide, we've had things like the Rio Treaty, Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, and 25 COPs, and nothing has worked. Our systems of democracy have dismally failed. This is why we need to try something completely new and completely radical. Now, to get to carbon net zero by 2050, which itself is too late, as stated by the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, wealthy nations actually need to be carbon net zero by 2030. So if we need to get to this point, we need to drastically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, as you can see from the slide, the later we act, the steeper this reduction has to be, and the more disruption we will see to our everyday lives. If we had started this reduction 30 years ago, this reduction would have been smooth and gradual. However, the emissions continue to sharply increase, and we're now at levels at 2020. This is why every year is a crucial year, and we must act now.